Yo, what's going on, y'all? So in this video, we're going to be simplifying meditation. What it is, how it works, super quick, easy, simple, right? Now, I feel like within spirituality, meditation is one of, if not the most popular idea that interests a lot of people. And the funny thing about meditation is that it's one of those things where it's so simple that it's so easy to overthink it. And because of that, many people have misconceptions as to what meditation really is and how it actually works. And we're going to see in this video how it's so easy. It's so funny when you realize how easy it is, and how silly we are to overthink it, right? So let's jump straight into it, right? So why don't we meditate together? Why don't we do this together? And I'm going to guide you through a meditation. I'm going to explain for you what it is that we're doing as we're doing it, right? All right, so we're going to close our eyes, and I want you to just pay attention to my voice, all right? Now, from the average perspective, as somebody getting somewhere, doing something, it's easy to consider meditation or meditating as something we're doing, as some kind of action. Meditation is not something you do as an action. Meditating is not something you're doing. Meditating is not doing anything. Meditating is simply just being without doing anything. Meditating is being without thinking, okay? As a mental practice or discipline. And so, let's start with our breath. And as a beginner, what you're going to do is you're going to use your breath as your anchor. Your breathing is your anchor. So what you need to do is start there. Bring your mind, your attention away from your thoughts, away from your feelings, actions, brain, body, universe. Bring your mind, bring your attention towards your breath and hold it there. Keep it right there on your breathing. So let's just breathe together. And depending on how noisy your mind is, just in that moment alone, you may have noticed that right away your mind started thinking again. You started thinking again. And your attention, your mind, was taken away from your breathing and back towards thinking. Your mind was brought away from your breath back towards your thoughts. Every time your mind is brought away from your breath back towards your thoughts, that is what we can call absence. Okay? Meditation, therefore, is the art of presence, as the practice of being without thinking. It's very simple to meditate. As soon as you start thinking, stop thinking and start being. As a beginner, as soon as you start thinking, stop thinking and start breathing. As soon as you notice that your mind is focused on your thoughts, gently, lovingly bring your mind back to your breath, away from your thoughts. As soon as you start thinking, stop thinking, start breathing. And it's going to take some time to discipline your mind. When your mind is so used to focusing on your thoughts and not used to focusing on your breath, it's going to be very quick and easy for your mind to get lost in your thoughts again. And as soon as you notice that you are thinking too much again, as soon as you notice you've started thinking at all, stop thinking and start breathing. And bring your attention away from your thoughts back towards your breath. All right? Therefore, meditating, as meditation is the art of presence, which is simply just being without thinking. Simply just being without doing anything. Okay? Now, obviously, as you are simply just being, right here, right now, you're going to experience thoughts, feelings, actions, memories, reminders, anticipations, mental activity, mental states as weather patterns, thoughts, feelings, memories, ideas, reminders, daydreams, visions, intuitions, any and every mental object as clouds. Mental objects are clouds. Mental states are weather patterns. But the mind is the sky, as the space in which all of these mental objects and mental states are appearing and disappearing. So, what we need to be able to do through meditating is we need to develop self-knowledge as knowledge of the mind, where meditating in this regard is investigating, studying the nature of the mind to see what the mind is and how the mind works. And one of the best analogies that we can use to understand the nature of the mind is the analogy of the sky. In the same way you have the sky, clouds, and weather patterns, you have the mind, thoughts, and mental states. Just in the same way, clouds and weather patterns appear and disappear in the sky, thoughts and mental states appear and disappear in the mind. Clouds and mental states are always changing. The sky is unchanging. Thoughts, feelings, mental states, mental objects and mental states are always changing. The mind is unchanging. So just in the same way that the sky is the space in which all clouds and weather patterns appear and disappear, the mind is the space in which all mental objects and mental states appear and disappear. if the sky is the outer space that clouds and weather patterns appear and disappear in, the mind is the inner space that mental objects and mental states appear and disappear in. The mind is like the sky. All that you are as the mind is the sky. Everything else is just the weather. The mind as the sky in this analogy, the inner space that all mental objects and mental states appear and disappear in, is consciousness as the state of being. Consciousness as the state of being is life itself as oneself, the conscious being. Okay? As the conscious being, you are intuitively knowing you exist. You are intuitively knowing I am as the conscious being. Consciousness as the state of being is the intuitive knowing of oneself as I am. If I say, for example, if I use myself as an example, I am Hunter, that's being human. Where that phrase, that self-expression, that affirmation, I am, is the affirmation of one's very being. The state of being as consciousness, oneself as the conscious being, is the knower, intuitively knowing oneself as I am. The intuitive knowing I am is being right here, right now, where one's very being, or simply just being, is the intuitive knowing I am. Okay? That is the mind as the space in which all objects are contained. All objects inside of the brain and all objects outside of the body. The immaterial objects inside of the brain and the material objects outside of the body are all inside of the mind. Because you are conscious of the brain, the body, and the universe, the brain, the body, and the universe are inside of consciousness. The brain, the body, and the universe are inside of the mind. As an appearance of the mind, appearing to the mind. All right? So, the mind as the state of being, life itself as oneself, the conscious being, is the space that thoughts, feelings, all mental objects and mental states are appearing in, arising to, appearing and disappearing in, coming and going through, passing through. Meditating is being able to see that. To be able to see you are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You are not the activity of the brain or body. This is all a mental phenomena, mental objects, like images on a screen that are moving, appearing, and disappearing. You are there before you start thinking, as you're thinking, and after you stop thinking. You are there before you started feeling that way, as you were feeling that way, and after you stopped feeling that way. So, thoughts, feelings, mental objects, mental states, mental phenomena are all appearances in the mind, arising to the mind as appearances of the mind. like a reflection in the mirror. So, mental objects, mental states, mental phenomena are reflections. As you appearing to yourself as an object to yourself. The mind is oneself as the subject. Appearing other than oneself as an object to oneself, which is reflecting in the form of thoughts, feelings, mental objects, mental phenomena, mental states. Everything from the brain, the body, the universe is all a phenomena of the mind, an appearance in the mind, of the mind, to itself as a reflection. So it's paradoxical or contradictory, because you are appearing as your thoughts. Appearing as your thoughts is what we would call becoming your thoughts. Becoming is really just behaving as appearing. So thinking is what you're doing. You are appearing as that thought to yourself in your mind, materializing yourself as your thoughts, appearing as the thought in your mind. So if we use the analogy of a mirror, just in the same way when you're standing in the mirror, looking at your reflection, you are not your reflection, but your reflection is you. You are not your thoughts, but your thoughts are you. Appearing to yourself as an object to yourself. Seeming to be something other than yourself, but really being nothing other than oneself. So thoughts are the mind's reflection. Same with feelings, mental objects, mental states, mental phenomena. Everything inside of the brain and outside of the body. The brain-body universe. It's all the mind's reflection. All right? So, we can see how meditating as the art of presence, which is simply just being, is the intuitive knowing of oneself as I am, the intuition of self-knowledge as the truth of who we are and what this is. So the intuition of what the mind is and how the mind works is the self-knowledge of who we are and what this is. It's one and the same thing, like a dream. And so that's where the art of presence, the practice of just being without thinking, is the intuitive knowing of oneself. Through that intuitive knowing, which is self-knowledge as self-reflection, a mixture of self-observation and contemplation, we inevitably develop self-knowledge intuitively. As being itself, we are inherently knowing ourself, because knowing is oneself as being itself. Oneself as the conscious being is the intuitive knowing of oneself as I am, which is life itself as consciousness, the state of being. Without thinking, without doing anything. So while you are simply just being here now, you are going to have thoughts, feelings, actions of the brain and body, activity of the brain and body. You're going to perceive things, see, hear, taste, touch, smell things, right? But all we're focusing on is our thoughts. And as soon as we start thinking, we stop thinking and start breathing. And we bring our attention away from our thoughts back towards our breath. So we are minimizing how long we are absent for and maximizing how long we are present for. All right? And the reason why this is important is in the context of suffering, as stress, depression, and anxiety created in the mind by your thoughts, where suffering is thinking, or thinking is suffering. Although not all thinking is suffering, all suffering is thinking. Not all thoughts are unhealthy. Some thoughts are healthy. So if we define suffering as unhealthy thinking, not all thoughts are unhealthy. Therefore, not all thinking is suffering, but all suffering is thinking as unhealthy thoughts. So that's where meditation, as the art of presence, being without thinking, is whacking weeds. Another analogy that we can use is the analogy of a garden. The mind is the soil of life. Thoughts are seeds planted in the brain. They take root in the heart and sprout in the body as thoughts, feelings, and actions, which is creating your life around you. Creating is manifesting. So meditation is cultivation. Meditating is cultivating. Observing your thoughts, identifying the quality and quantity of your thoughts, the way you're thinking and how much you're thinking that way, and determining whether those thoughts are healthy or unhealthy. Determining whether those seeds are crops or weeds. Suffering is being caught up in the weeds and missing the bigger picture of the rest of the garden and seeing the crops, right? But when the mind is so focused on the unhealthy thoughts, it seems like that's all life is misery and suffering, right? When all the mind is focused on is suffering, life seems insufferable, all right? So you need to be able to take a step back and see the bigger picture and see all the crops around you rather than the weeds. Uproot the weeds, replace the weeds with crops. Kill off the unhealthy thoughts and replace them with healthy thoughts. Replace the weeds with crops, and we do so by taking our attention away from our thoughts. As soon as we start having unhealthy thoughts, we take our attention away from those unhealthy thoughts and bring our attention back to our breath. As soon as we start thinking, stop thinking and start breathing. Bring the mind away from the thoughts back towards the breath. As soon as you start thinking, stop thinking. As soon as you start thinking, stop thinking. And then once you become more advanced in this, and the mind feels like it's naturally resting on your breath without any resistance, you don't have to try. Your mind will naturally be able to hold its attention on your breathing on its own, and it'll be able to do so for longer and longer and longer. Your breath is your anchor until you become more advanced and even your breath is something that you are to let go of. So first you let go of your thoughts and anchor your attention in your breath. And then you let go of your breath and anchor your attention in yourself. At first, your mind is anchored in your thinking. The mind is anchored in thinking. Second, the mind becomes anchored in breathing. And third, the mind becomes anchored in being. So the breath is a stepping stone you use as a beginner. The anchor point that you use to take your attention away from your thoughts. And once you've mastered that step, you take your attention away from even your breath. You take your attention away from your breathing and hold your attention anchored in your breathing. Take your attention away from your breath and rest your attention on yourself, on your being, in yourself, in your being. And once you do that long enough and you master that, you will experience full presence, true peace of mind, where peace of mind, peace as the nature of the mind, the true nature of the mind is happiness, as love, which is life, right? The unhappiness, the suffering, the disturbance or dissatisfaction you're experiencing is all made up by your thoughts. So you have to see those weeds for what they are and whack them as soon as possible. And when all those weeds are whacked and replaced with crops, you will have peace of mind and find true happiness and love life to the fullest. Live life to the fullest. Life only seems insufferable because you are suffering through unhealthy thoughts. Meditation is the cultivation of unhealthy thoughts, the minimization of weeds, the maximization of crops, the minimization of unhealthy thoughts, the maximization of healthy thoughts. This is the art of presence, being without thinking. Because attending to your thoughts is watering them, which is feeding into them. So as soon as you're having those unhealthy thoughts, you take your attention away from those unhealthy thoughts. You stop watering the weeds and they wither away and die. That's how you kill your thoughts. That's how you whack those weeds so that they're no longer creating suffering in your mind and causing your life to feel insufferable. Okay? That's why meditation is so important. That's what I want to be able to share with you guys here now. Okay? So, meditating is the remedy for suffering. It's maybe not necessarily the eliminating of suffering, but the minimizing of suffering. Right? There's always going to be negative thoughts. There's always going to be weeds. And all we can do is cultivate our mind and whack those weeds as soon as possible. And cultivate our garden. Cultivate our crops, right? So meditating, therefore, is simply just being without thinking. Meditation is the art of presence as simply just being without thinking. Right here, right now. All right? And the longer you do this, the bigger the gaps will become between the first thought and the next thought, until it's like a clear sky and there's rarely any clouds in it, here and there, every so often. All right? Until the mind is naturally thoughtless, as the true nature of the mind. Thoughtlessness, presence, being without thinking. All right? And when you experience those gaps, the longer and bigger they are, the more you'll understand the true nature of the mind as peace, which is happiness. And then when you start thinking, you start feeling a certain way and acting a certain way because of that, because of those thoughts. All right? So I think we can just about stop there. I think that just about simplifies the idea of meditation as a mental practice or discipline. Most importantly, in the context of suffering and how to minimize or eliminate suffering in reference to what it is. But it's also a kind of intuitive knowing of oneself, the intuitive self-knowledge, the intuition of self-knowledge as to who we are and what this is. That's the byproduct of meditating. That's what naturally, inevitably comes along with it. Because being is knowing oneself. Okay? So, I love you guys. I hope that this helped, and I will be back with more videos ASAP.